Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Human Resources Appointment and Equity Committee, 10:05, Tuesday, August 9th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Calling the roll, Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is absent at the moment. There is a quorum.
I take it we've had a few minutes to look over the minutes for the July 5th last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Minutes have been approved from the July 5th, 2016 meeting. Matters referred to the committee today are R2016-0124. If you could read that resolution into the record, please.
And also, Madam Chair, there's no one signed in for public comment. Resolution number 2016-0124, adopting various changes to the Cuyahoga County non-bargaining classification plan.
All right, and who is here to present these today?
Morning.
I don't think the button's on.
That better?
Oh, yes.
I'm here today on behalf of the PRC and for Albert Bouchahine, who is our manager of classification and compensation, who's on vacation. We are here requesting your consideration of a number of modifications of the county's class plan today. You've been given a packet. These changes were all prepared by the PRC's class and comp team in collaboration with the department leadership and with the members of the HR department that were assigned to those departments. These changes are being driven in part by routine maintenance to the class plan and also the county's operational needs. The changes, if you'll take a look at that chart, I think it's on page 25 of your packet. It includes 3 classification revisions, 2 new classifications, and the deletion of 1 existing classification. 2 of the revised classifications were last updated in 2008. The other one was last updated in 1995. So these are necessary changes. The packet that you have been given includes a statement for each of these proposed changes that defines the rationale for the changes, the parties who requested the changes. And if you can refer to that chart for a minute, I'll take you through that list. The 2 new classifications, talent acquisition and employment specialists, and the domestic mediator are the result of the department's operational needs. The Department of Human Resources confirmed that both of these new positions are positions for which there is adequate funding. The domestic mediator position is actually a new classification that reflects the essential functions and minimum requirements for the position, which was formerly the program officer, which is a classification that we've mentioned to you in the past as something that we're trying to address. The 3 revised classifications, the administrative hearing officer, the hearing officer supervisor, and the administrative hearing program administrator, are just being modified as a result of routine maintenance of the class plan. These changes had no impact on the pay grades that were assigned to those classifications, so there's no fiscal impact to these proposed changes. They're simply updated to reflect the work that's being performed today in those classifications. The proposed deleted position is a senior payroll officer because the county has entered into a collective bargaining agreement with Local 860 to cover that position, representing employees in the fiscal office now. And in accordance with our rules, these proposed changes were all posted for 20 days prior to the commissioners acting on them, and they were approved at the PRC's June 29th meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you take this committee through the process of how these proposed revised classifications get to your office?
In fact, I'll defer to Jason Sobchak to come up and explain the details of the process.
Good morning, Council. Jason Sobchak, Classification and Compensation Specialist with the PRC. With regard to the revised classifications, these were a part of our routine maintenance. The PRC has identified those positions which are in an old format. They may not have the essential functions that have been updated since Well, two of these have not been updated since 2008, and one has not been updated since 1995. As we go through that list, it just so happens for this one, for this presentation, that these three were identified for Job and Family Services. We would look at those that need to be updated. We would then send information out to the department heads, the supervisors, the director, to ask them to fill out a comprehensive position questionnaire, a CPQ. They would fill that out with revised or new essential job functions. We would get that back, mock-up draft templates of positions, the classification spec. We'd send that out for review to the departments. We'd have a back and forth. We'd get HR, the HR managers involved with regard to if they have any input or changes. Then we would send that spec, once everybody agrees on it, to our vendor for pay grade determination. We'd also look at if it was exempt, non-exempt for FLSA status. Once we have all those specs done, everybody's happy with it, that's when we post it on the PRC's website for 20 days. We have public comment with the commissioners at their meeting. Once they approve it, then we will have that sent to you folks, council, to be sent to subcommittee, and we'll discuss it with you.
I know HR and PRC as well as council is trying to shorten the stay of things. So just wondering, in the past, with this process of the 20 days, has anybody, for any of the positions, ever been questioned or anything like that so far in the past?
Incumbents in the position?
Right.
Yes, we would reach out to them for input as well. We wouldn't just rely strictly on the supervisors, the department directors. The incumbents in the position are probably our main focus because they'll give us some of the most accurate information we can to update it. Once we get to the PRC's point of posting on our website, those individuals can come for public comment too, but they're usually in the loop on the front end too to give us any input they would like.
Okay, so there has been, for some certain positions, there has been some commentary at the commissioners' meetings.
If I could address you, Chairwoman, in the years that we have been doing this, we have only had one employee who came to a PRC meeting, and generally I think that's a result of the fact that their input is sought out in the beginning of this process, so they've already contributed before it even comes to the commission for approval.
Who determines the revised functions for positions, and what process is used to determine these characteristics? You know, and that's probably, I guess it depends on if it's coming from your office and you're just doing some routine clarification and catching up, and then I'm assuming that for proposed new classifications, that would probably be HR.
Yeah, the proposed new ones would all come through HR. The revisions are also done in collaboration, so they're not done exclusively by the PRC or staff.
What does that process look like?
For the revised
Yeah.
ones that are part of the routine maintenance, it's the same process that basically that Jason just described to you. The CPQs are still sent out. People have an opportunity to provide that input. Their supervisors have an opportunity to provide that input, and then it's approached collaboratively. The drafts are done, sent back out to them for review and revision.
You know, what's the time frame for something like that?
30, 60 days.
Okay.
We can get you that data if you want. We have the hard data back at the office.
And for the proposed deleted classifications, what role does PRC play in these?
Well, in this particular case, when there is a proposed deletion, it's as a result of the fact that this position was absorbed into a bargaining unit. We would only be recommending deletion of a classification if we had noticed a classification that hasn't been used for a long period of time, and we've reached out to the Department and to Human Resources to find out whether there were plans to fill it in the future or whether or not it was just, it was a position that had become moot. So again, it would be a collaborative process.
Any questions from the committee? Councilman Miller?
Madam Chair, Ms. Kaczynski, am I correct that the classification plan only includes non-bargaining. There's no bargaining positions in the class plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you mentioned about routine review of classifications. Do you have a systematic process going on to review all the classifications over a period of time? And if so, what determines which ones are done first and how long is it going to take to review all of them?
Through the chairwoman to the councilman, I appreciate the question, Mr. Miller, because it gives an opportunity to talk about some of our strategic focus. We have been approaching this work from the beginning with an eye toward getting to a point that classifications are routinely reviewed once every 4 years is our goal. With the new administration and the recent additions to the HR department has become much more involved with dialogue about how that the review of the class plan occurs, and they're looking at a strategic drive to that, basically looking at places where there are challenges to either recruit or retain employees. So we're going to start collaborating with them and revising our priorities in accordance with their needs. But our goal is to get through those 400 or so classifications in a way that we can get to the point that every 4 years we're reviewing about 100 of them routinely, and that way we'll be able to keep them up to date much more efficiently.
Madam Chair, Ms. Kopczynski, how many of the 400 plus classifications have been reviewed and updated since the start of the new government?
I don't know that I have that number at my fingertips. I can get it to you. Is that fair? Yeah. I can certainly send you an update.
And Madam Chair, Ms. Kopczynski, final question. Could you explain a little bit more about this exemption or non-exemption from FLSA status, what that means?
Sure. Basically, the exemption from the FLSA status, it's really just exemption from the overtime provisions of that law. And I'm not an attorney, so don't expect more of me than I can provide at this point. But basically, it means that they're either entitled to overtime under that statute or not. There are changes coming down the pike in that law. We are going to be addressing this committee, in fact, within a couple of months about how we're going to be changing our practices to address the anticipated changes that are coming down at the end of the year about the FLSA. But for the time being, we're noticing on our classification specifications whether a position is considered exempt or non-exempt.
And Madam Chair, Ms. Kopczynski, am I correct that the changes have the effect that more people are going to be eligible for overtime?
That's a common interpretation.
Okay.
For our purposes, so you know what's coming, and this has always been the case, but now when the changes go into effect, we're going to be noting on each classification that the work actually meets the criteria to be exempt, if that's the case. But it's going to be up to the HR department to evaluate the salaries of the people in those classifications, because you may have people within the same classification, some of whom are considered exempt and some of whom are considered non-exempt, depending on where their salaries fall in relation to the new salary guidelines. So, but we'll give you more detail on that in a couple of months.
Any other questions? Councilman Germana.
Madam Chair, I don't have a question concerning this piece of legislation, but once this is done, I do want to bring up an issue about filling job openings. Okay.
Any more on this topic? Have these changes occurred in relation to the proposed new classifications that are listed here?
No, we haven't taken that new approach yet.
Okay. Have these people been hired, these jobs been posted, anything like that?
For the new classifications?
Yeah, in this? Okay.
No.
But in the past, some things have.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Oh, okay. I take that back. I stand corrected. The talent acquisition and employment specialist was in fact posted. The PRC hasn't taken any action to fill that at this point.
Okay. So it's not filled right now?
No.
But been posted. Okay, and the domestic relations mediator, you said it used to be considered a program officer?
That's a program officer classification that was, I think what we've explained to you in the past, in the program officer classification, it was used as a catch-all. And what we're finding in reviewing that is that some of the people that are performing those duties, performing work in that classification, are performing unique duties with unique requirements. And so this is an example of one of the times that we broke that out and created a special classification for that position.
Okay, so the previous one, being called the program officer, why wouldn't it be under a proposed deleted? You just changed the title, basically, and the job functions.
And the position is still, the classification, program officer classification still exists, and there are still other people in that
Oh,
classification.
okay, gotcha. All right. Who would be able, any other questions in regards to this legislation? Is there, I believe there's a time limit this needs to be,
We have requested that it be considered tonight at second reading with a suspension of the rules, basically to respond to the need from the Human Resources Department to fill that talent acquisition specialist.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Miller?
Is it listed on tonight's agenda for consideration?
Pending our
Pending
passage.
referral, yeah, okay. I will make a motion
Thank you.
to favorably refer Resolution 2016-0124 to the full council at tonight's meeting for consideration for passage on second reading suspension.
Thank you, Councilman Miller.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of these proposed classification changes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, matter will be referred to the Committee of the Whole for this evening. And who would be able to address Councilman Germanis?
Madam Chair,
Can you state it again?
let me just preface this that unfortunately, the last 2 weeks I had the opportunity to attend 2 funerals of county employees. One was a long time with the fiscal office, the other one was with Public Works. And of course, I was recognized as a county councilman. Some of these people I didn't even know, so, at the wake and after a funeral, I'd be talking to people and I'd say, hey, how are we doing? And 2 things kept coming up, and I was kind of surprised because I've been thinking that this new government is the best thing since sliced bread, and we do a lot of things right. But 2 of the comments that I kept hearing, and I was a little bit surprised at, is the new system, it is taking a lot of time to get jobs filled, okay? Now, I can understand in the old system, maybe how they were filled too fast, because maybe they were filled before the person was even gone. But that was one. The other one is the purchasing. It is so, the process of purchasing is taking longer than it ever has. So as far as, I said, well, these are good questions, and can everybody answer, do we need to streamline something? Is there something wrong with the system that it's taking so long to fill vacancies? Can anybody speak to that?
For the PRC. I can speak to only a small portion of the hiring process. I can tell you that when the PRC worked with with Director Hara to negotiate the transition of work of civil service testing from the county to the PRC, we anticipated that it was going to take us longer to get up to speed because we found that a lot of the position descriptions that we were looking for to generate tests from didn't exist. We are still struggling with that, but we do have data. We've been tracking this since we started in March of 2015, and I'm happy to come back to this committee with those charts to show the improvements that we've made. We also know that there's a balance to be struck between the time it takes to hire somebody and the quality of the hiring process. And I think that we're very close to the objectives that we set out for the PRC's testing team, and I'm very proud of those numbers, so we're happy to bring those to you. I think the rest of the hiring process is something that HR should address. We don't own any other portion of that except for the portion of the testing process.
So you're agreeing that the filling of positions is taking much longer than,
I can tell you that the process that we're engaged in from the point that we are notified that a vacancy exists in a classified position and the time that an eligibility list is posted and provided to the appointing authority took us a lot longer than we liked in the beginning. But I think we've reached to the point, we're down to the point that I think that process takes about 30 days, which includes a 2-week notice of testing period when we have a test that's already been developed and a classification that's already been finalized. That's pretty close to the minimum that we're comfortable with in terms of the time that takes to get that turned around. The rest of the process, I don't have current information on how long that takes. So I think, again, I would defer to HR for that.
And I know Councilman Germain, Councilman Miller and I, as well as Rebecca, as well as the HR chief, Mr. Dykes, Director Dykes, in the future, we plan on having future HR committees to talk about classification. We're going to break it down. And the reason that, as well as the process on the hiring for the county, I had received a letter, and I think it CC'd a lot of individuals. It was a letter, anonymous letters that lost in Cuyahoga County, and it was several disheartening allegations from a county employee, or maybe not a county employee, but somebody that's watching in the public. And it seemed like it was all negativity towards the PRC, and I know the hard work that they've put in. And so we've kind of talked about having some future, we're giving Rebecca time to get her data and stuff to break down some of those issues that were addressed in the letter, because clearly there's still some loss of communication with the employees, or all the employees that maybe not having access to a computer of the things that have been going on and things that have been done. So we're gonna start having those this fall in regards to that, to address not only the employees, so hopefully they'll keep on watching, but the continued dialogue that we've been having once a month, and how to build these processes and make them much better and faster, efficient, and that takes it's taking a lot, and they're doing their part as far as cleaning up classifications and things on that. So hopefully that'll help, and we'll try to start those before you leave, so you can be.
I'd like to hear from HR in response to that.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Kelly. I'm the manager of talent acquisition and employment for the county. So happy to address your concerns. I agree. I absolutely agree. It's taking way too long to fill jobs. One of the things that I'm doing as a manager about 3 months into my role is looking at the data. I look forward to sharing that data with council, with PRC, in identifying opportunities to streamline the process. We do see differences in the time to fill between unclassified and classified. There's also a difference between bargaining unit positions. And so, one of the things that I've undertaken is not only a review of kind of how long it takes to go through each step, but which steps actually add value, which ones may just add time and I know that PRC has looked at that as well, and we're looking at coming together as Councilwoman Conwell shared. I'll tell you, my goal for unclassified, because that's an area where we have pretty much the majority of control over it, is that we would be filling jobs in no longer than 45 days from when the personnel request is approved and when an offer is extended. I've done that in previous organizations, some of which were government organizations, so I'm confident that we can get there. You know, one of the things that is going to be helpful is the fact that you approve the talent acquisition and employment specialist position. So with that, we'll have dedicated staff focused only on the talent acquisition, the recruiting efforts. In the past, we had HR analysts doing that work, and while they were doing good work, they were spread pretty thin. So that's one of the things that the HR department has done. We've recognized that need to fill jobs more efficiently, and so we've restructured the work that's being done, and we've created this new role to really support our appointing authorities, support the hiring needs, get positions posted and filled with quality candidates. And again, my goal will be 45 days for unclassified. I'm exploring the opportunity to do that with bargaining units, and again, looking forward to partnering with PRC to bring that time down. But yeah, it's absolutely taking too long, and we'll be looking forward to presenting, you know, maybe later in the third quarter or early fourth quarter, and share some of our findings and some of the process that we're looking at streamlining. I'd invite anybody that would be interested on August 29th, we're hosting a Kaizen event. What that is a rapid improvement process event based on Lean Six Sigma principles and theories. And what we're doing is we're looking at the unclassified process. We're inviting stakeholders from all different appointing authorities that have unclassified positions, and working together as a team to identify how we can streamline the process. We've invited PRC to attend as well. Even though they're not directly involved with unclassified positions, we figure the more collaboration we can have, the better. Out of that day, we will have an improvement plan that would be approved by our Chief Talent Officer, and we would be looking to implement some of those changes. One thing I can share with you that I think will make a drastic increase is that I've sought out a different background check process. Reduce time to fill, meaning you know, we would be able to fill the jobs faster. One of the many challenges we have is that for our background check process, it can take 30 or more days. There is an opportunity to have our background check process done through a different process that'll take 3 to 5 business days. We're in the process of finalizing the contract approvals. We did an RFP. I believe that will be in place within the next 3 weeks. So once we're able to do that, we should see a significant decrease in the time to fill. And we're looking at a number of other key pieces that should really make a significant impact, and should hopefully see a change in the next few weeks and months. Number of things I rattled off, but we're definitely focusing on that time to fill. That's a critical performance indicator for myself and my team, and we know that it's critical for all of our people and our stakeholders to be able to do their work.
I'll go to Councilwoman. Are you finished, Councilman Germana?
Thank you for your answer. I'm glad I brought up the question, and where I'm coming from is, you know, from time to time, I'm explaining what a county council person is, because most people outside of Cuyahoga County don't even know, you know, what is that? And I explain, because I got a stock answer, and a stock answer is the executive county council system is the way urban counties should be run, and we're setting the standard. So, and I really believe that in the way that we go out for our key positions where there used to be politicians running for positions. Now we're going after qualified people that are vetted by council and so on. So that's what's important. I think, whatever we can do to be the best in running urban counties, we should do. And having our system of county government should not be an impediment to running efficiently. So that's really where I'm coming from.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. The question I have for you is, most of our time is spent on with bargaining for classified positions. Can you explain to me why we would focus on the unclassified process first?
Well, frankly, as far as HR's, I guess, purview or, responsibilities, that's the one that we have essentially complete control over. And so we thought that this might be a model to inform other areas. And, we're hoping that we can apply it to bargaining unit where possible, and then, share some of our findings, some of our suggestions for the classified portion. Now, their process is separate, and we don't want to step on any toes. But our thought was, hey, this is the unclassified areas, the area that we have complete control over, so we can change or streamline the process a little more easily, share those findings, and hopefully be able to apply that. The bargaining units will be able to work with, as long as we're in alignment with the collective bargaining agreements. So we're definitely focused on that as well. But the other piece with classify, we know PRC needs to do what they need to do. So we just hope that we can kind of outline an improved process and partner with PRC to see if there's opportunities for the whole timeline to be shrunken down a little bit.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you want to focus on that area to kind of set the standard for the model that will hopefully be embraced by the other.
That's the hope,
Okay, so
where
it-
possible, because there's only, there are separate processes, so I don't want to glaze over that. I know PRC has their process, and there's civil service laws and things along those lines that would be at play. But yes, I think there might be some portions of the process that could be informed by this improvement plan.
And this will be a collaborative effort then with the PRC.
Yes, we've invited George Vaughn to the rapid improvement process for the unclassified. And we'd invite anybody else from the PRC if they were interested, just to see how we're doing it, and participate as they see fit.
Before I go to Councilman Miller, I just want to caution, it seems that there's a process going on. I appreciate working with the unclassified, because you have control over that, so to say. But it just seems like I want to caution the classified positions, the unclassified being, a lot of the classified positions being moved to unclassified, to be able, it just seems like that. So I know we're working on that. The group is working on that, because you clearly stated that that's an easier process, but I also have some concerns about some of the classified positions being made into unclassified. So although I appreciate this August 29th, I think we're gonna have to really be in collaboration on all of them. Yes, on one hand, you have control of the unclassified, but we're also seeing a movement of the classified to the unclassified. And I think that we have a lot of talent here in the county, and that we can come together and we could actually keep our classified positions and get it down to a 45-day process. So I just want to throw that caution out there that is clearly in our minds. And now I'll go to Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, to Mr. Talon. I'm actually thinking very much along the same lines as the chairperson. It would be great if you achieved your goal and you reduced the time to fill on the unclassified to 45 days or less. But I think it could have an unintended consequence, because right now the time to fill in the classified is nowhere close to that, and it could create an incentive to change positions from classified to unclassified to speed up the hiring process. And I would appreciate your comment on that, and how do we prevent that from happening?
Well, I think first off, there is a review of responsibilities that would dictate whether a position is classified or unclassified. And so I think while there might be a residual effect, there's only so much that can be done to try to manipulate that. And I think our teams, including the law team, PRC, and HR, would be very cognizant of that. We want to respect the fact that there are classified positions, and I think if somebody was just trying to switch it based on that, there are enough steps and checks within the process that would be flagged and caught. And it is something that we would be sure to be mindful and cognizant of. I think overall, as Councilman Germana shared, there's a lot of desire from all of our stakeholders to have positions filled in a timely manner. If the process for unclassified takes a little bit longer, I think people will understand. I think a lot of times it has to do with setting the expectation. There are occasions where it's taking 7 to 9 months to fill positions, and people are being placed in temporary work level assignments, and that's putting a stress on the staff, the employees, the hiring manager. So ultimately, I think, I think our obligation is to make sure that operations are running as strongly and as efficiently as possible. I would hope that we would be able to get to a place where, whether it's 45 days for unclassified and 60 days for classified or something along those lines, that it's a, reasonable amount of time for someone to have a vacancy and not have operations suffer. But that's something that we could talk about as we proceed and collaborate, if there needs to be, some sort of communication plan or effort to address that potential, I guess, abuse of the system. But ultimately, I think we could all work together to get that time to fill down to a reasonable 2-3 month time frame, something along those lines.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Miller.
based on what I'm seeing, I'm not convinced that there are currently enough checks and balances in place to ensure that there is not a drift from classified to unclassified positions. And I think that process of how that determination is made and how the determination interacts with the existing classification plan, and I think these are areas that clearly need some attention going forward. I have one follow-up question for Ms. Kopczynski, and the question is to as for the classified positions that have been filled this year, what proportion of them actually involve civil service tests being administered, and And I'm using civil service tests in the broader sense, knowing that not in all cases do we structure it as an examination in the way that we used to think of.
Through the chairwoman to the councilman, in fact, that broadening of that definition was incorporated into the law. So the law even recognizes that can be an assessment center, it can be a structured interview. I will tell you that since the PRC has been involved in the filling of classified positions, 100% of them are going through our process, and there is a test of some sort administered.
Okay, fine.
I have a question. Are you done, Councilman?
One follow-up question to Ms. Kopczynski. What do you think would be an achievable goal on time to fill for classified positions?
We're actually beginning to look around to see what other people are doing, to find out what, that's one measure that we would look to. We also look to the private sector because we know that sort of represents the ideal. Civil service does put some process into place that takes time necessarily. I don't believe, in my conversations with the manager of employment testing, George Vaughn, I don't believe that we believe less than 30 days is going to be efficient. I think that there is value to having the people involved in the hiring need, the managers, if you will, the hiring managers, the directors. I think there's value in asking them, does this classification still meet your needs? That takes a little bit of time. Does the test that we did the last time still fit your needs? Is there a way that we can improve? Is there technology that's available today that wasn't available when we did this the first time? We are still very, very young, relatively speaking, in looking at testing from a professional perspective. So I think that there's, we operate from a mindset of continual improvement at the PRC. And so we do engage the stakeholders in those conversations. So I think that 30 days is a reasonable expectation from the PRC, and we're pretty close to it at this point.
30 days for the classified.
Right. For our piece of it.
Okay.
Right.
All right. You done, Councilman Miller? All right.
Thank you.
All right. So what I kind of heard today is that you would, if you're going to have a strategic plan in regards to HR, that it's going to be sometime, if ever, because of the different units, to maybe have a process that would be broken down for unclassified, the timing, it would be for that, classified, and then the bargaining. And then making sure that those time frames, once we get it to its closest to perfection, that's listed on the hiring, the job posting when we post it, like this position. And I think that'll be, I don't think that's on there now. I think we just kind of just look at it as an overall, but I think that would help the people that are trying to get hired into the process, those that might want to move from one position within the county to another. So if we can work on that. I think another thing that we need to probably come to on a commonality would be when we talk about filling a position and just that segment, what does that look like? Are we talking about vacancy of the position to the actual hiring process? And I think we're all, for different positions, we're looking at different timings, and we need to get that clear. So and I think that some of the caveat that happened in these is when we were having fiscal issues, as a department might get a vacancy, but somebody made a determination because of our budget, we're not going to refill that position. So it didn't go through its normal process either. So we need to look at all those nuances, I think. Who will make that determination if their budget, so we're not looked upon as we're not hiring fast enough. And it just amazes me that, and I think the key factor is because we haven't set a collective thought in what is the filling the position, what time frame to what time frame? Because when we started in 2012, I know this committee discussed in length of why the process was, at that time, it was 2 months taking to hire positions. And it just seems like now we've gotten longer from that process. So that's not a good thing, going the other way. So I think we need to focus on that. And as you shared, is it Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
As you shared, the background checks at that time from Director Hare played a big deal on our hiring process. And she explained how the state, and it's a small office, so we're very familiar with that. So in the coming weeks, or maybe the next meeting that we have, we could meet prior to that, and you could fill in me and Councilman Miller a little bit more on the new process for background checks that you guys are thinking about. It's the first time I've heard about it, so sounds good, but
Yeah, absolutely. I heard just a few quick things that I'll just comment on. I do agree that there needs to be, for the applicants, whether they're internal or external, a better setting of expectations, whether that goes on the posting or if we have more consistent communication once they've applied, once they've been interviewed, setting those expectations so we don't lose good people that are in the job search, and that just the common courtesy, customer service approach to things. And yes, I think an agreed upon kind of operational definition of some of these terms and key performance indicators that we'll be monitoring will be critical. And then yes, I would be happy. We have been going through the purchasing and the RFP process for the background check vendor, and so we'd be happy to share that information. I will say that the people that, for lack of a better way of putting it, the people that are going to be using firearms, the people that are working with children and seniors and things of that nature will still go through the old or the current process, because that's kind of many times mandated by the state and things along those lines. We're looking at other segments where we'll be able to do this other background check, which still gets at criminal background, verifies education, verifies employment history, things along those lines. But we do expect that will help with this time to fill. And we will have some data for you. We want to hold ourselves accountable and take a look at how our process is taking. And so we'll be sharing some of that information as far as details of time to fill for hires in recent time.
I just want to go back to the August 29th. You gave us the date, but I don't believe you gave us the time or the location for that.
So it will be here in this building. It is an all-day event. It's from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. I believe that the room may be on the 8th floor. I don't know off the top of my head, but if you are interested, we could send you the invite. And if you'd like to participate, or at the end of the day is when the presentation of the process improvement plan would be presented to our Chief Talent Officer and yourselves if you'd like to join us. And then we'd be happy to have you throughout the whole day or just at the end when you get to hear kind of the outcome of the day.
So for clarity, that whole all-day process will be to look at these various, we'll just be looking at the unclassified, and then at the end of the day, there'll be kind of a wrap-up
And we'll have an improvement plan. And the whole goal of a day like this would be to actually have an improvement plan that we get essentially the blessing from the Chief Talent Officer to implement. So the idea is get everybody that needs to be in the room there, get all the different pieces reviewed and figure out how we can improve them, have a final consolidated plan, get approval, and then we'd be looking to implement that pretty much immediately afterwards.
okay.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Germano.
if you could set the time, because I personally can't be there all day, but for that presentation, I'd like to be present So if you could kind of set a time of when that's going to happen, we'll let all council know.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I believe off the top of my head, the final report out or proposal would occur, I believe, more around 3:30 or so. So you'd take the last 45 minutes to review that. But I'll confirm and we can send out that invite. Be happy to have you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, can I just make a comment?
Yes, Councilman.
This is for Ms. Brown's sake. And I don't know if you ever had that feeling of seeing your kindergarten teacher or first grade teacher, you know, that feeling you have. Well, we got Kelly Neal in the audience, and 6 years ago when we were brand new council people, she was part of the team that trained us, and it's been a long time, and I got the feeling like seeing my kindergarten teacher. So.
All right, any other comments? All right. So make sure that you wish our dear Chrissy, and I don't know her new married last name. She got married what is it? Bushkowski. Okay, make sure you congratulate her when she returns off her honeymoon. And we do have some pictures. She was a beautiful blushing bride. And she's not here for me to embarrass her, so I'm doing it with her not here. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.